¿Listo?
Sí.
Listo. Okay. Well, let's get started.
Let's do it.
Josh, thank you so much for accepting my invite. Today's the day before Thanksgiving. It's a Wednesday. I'm sure you have better things to do than being here with me in a room just chatting away. So I'm very thankful. I've been, just like before we started recording, I told you that I've been following you on social media for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
You come across as someone very positive, helping people, not only with your business, but also your personal side, the videos, which we're going to talk about, kind of like the intent.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm very excited about the conversation today.
Hey,
so
man,
again, thank you, senor.
I'm blessed to be here. I'm really grateful for it.
No. Again, thank you, senor.
Yeah,
well,
dude.
let's get started, Josh. Talk to us a little bit about you. Give us a quick intro on who you are and what you do, please.
Yeah, sure. So my name's Josh. I'm Josh Stokes. Right now, I am a vegan meal prep cook, chef. We run a company called Grown Together, and really the purpose of it is to spread positivity, help influence our community in a positive way through providing meals that are going to nurture them and making it super accessible as well. So that's what I'm doing right now. I'm born and raised El Pasoan. Done some rock climbing here or there. Done some. I'm really big into the fitness world. And yeah, man, I love my city. I love my community, and I'm really just trying to give back to the city that's given me everything. So that's why I'm here.
Nice. Well, thank you for that intro.
Yeah,
Let's start with you being vegan, because that's the first thing that caught my eye, at least.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't talk a little bit about this, but I watched a documentary about 6 months ago on Netflix, by the way. And right after watching that, I'm like, I'm gonna go vegan, right?
Nice.
It showed all the benefits. It showed everything that, I mean, it compared kind of like the vegan diet with the normal diet, and everything they talked about, it made sense. I'm like, I'm trying to improve like my mental health, physical. So like, hey, I can obviously also improve on that. But then I realized how difficult it was. So I'm like, oh, okay, well, I have so many questions on that topic. So let's get started with that. Let me ask you, how long have you been a vegan? What made you become a vegan? Talk to me about that, please.
Sure, yeah. Let's see. I'm coming up on 4 years in February, so that'll be 4 years being vegan. And I went vegan almost unintentionally. So where it started was the intellectual component of having domain over an animal, where it's like, okay, so if something's smart enough, it started with me quitting eating octopus and pig, because pigs are smart, man. They're incredibly smart. And if there's a creature that is able to be aware of its surroundings and aware of its situation and build community, like if you look at octopus, they have communities underwater, like there's cities. Pigs, they have loved ones, and there's emotion there, you can see it. And I'm like, who am I to eat that animal if it's just as capable of feeling as I am? And with that same line of thought, kind of went downstream. A cow's intelligence level is similar to that of your dog. And like, I go home, dude, I know my dog loves the shit out of me, and subjecting an animal to, just because like I'm trying to feed myself because it tastes good, it didn't make sense to me anymore. So I'm like, well, I don't need that. I don't need that in my life. There's other ways for me to eat where I'm going to be sustained and healthy, and I don't have to take a life for that, and it kind of went down that thread, and I cut out chicken shortly thereafter, and then I was pescatarian for a while, and we went to Peru for a couple of weeks, and I overdid it on seafood and, maybe a little too much of celebrating as well. And I got back in town. I was like, you know what? I need to cleanse. I'm going to go vegan for a month. And I had a really good friend of mine also, my friend Giuliano. He's an awesome DJ, great friend of mine. He was, kind of influencing me a bit. And I was like, I'll give it a shot. I'll give going vegan a shot for a little bit. 2 weeks into it, I felt better inside than I had in years, if I'm being honest. And I've been vegan since then. So I just kind of never looked back, and it's been such a good move. In more ways than one, the health was one of the big things that led me that direction. But as you learn more about it and you get educated about the vegan diet and lifestyle as a whole, it's there to reduce suffering in the world. And and it supports you, you know. So yeah, it just kind of, like I said, it was unintentional, but one of the best gifts I've given to myself in a long time. So
Well, and this was 4 years ago, right?
February makes 4 years. Yeah.
Okay. And when did you decide to start a business around vegan prep meals?
The end of February.
Okay, tell us about the journey you starting that business. Was it because you were so excited about all the benefits, you wanted to share all the benefits with other people, with the community? Is that kind of like the main reason why you decided to open up this business?
Well, yeah, definitely part of it. You know, I think a lot of times when people start a business, they're kind of solving their own problem, you know. But before I get into that, there's a book called How Not to Die. The guy's name is Dr. Michael Greger, and he outlines all the big diseases that we face as a society, like the top diseases, you know, cardiovascular stuff, respiratory issues, gut issues, diabetes, all these different things, and shows you the scientific evidence that a plant-based diet can not only help eliminate some of the effects of it, but reverse it in some cases. And I thought that was so powerful. So I was actually reading that book on the way to Peru. But, you know, the further you get into it, then I listened to it on Audible a couple of times. And I was like, man, this is power. You know, this is power right here. Knowledge is power. And especially, Mama Earth, she gives to us. And a lot of our issues that exist in our lives, we've created ourselves, right? And I think the diet was part of that. So opening the business, it was more, I was just documenting the food and everything that I was making. People would hit me up. They're like, hey, you do meal preps, you do this, you do that. I'm like, no, I don't. And I talked to my friend Kim, and she mentioned, I was like, hey, dude, let's give it a shot. Why not? And I had just graduated from school, and I was like, you know what? Yeah, it's not a terrible idea. So we did a meal prep. People enjoyed it. Took the extra money I had from working a brunch and from like bartending, and yeah, just rolled it over into a meal prep. People got good feedback from it. People wanted to order again. I was like, okay, well, let's go down this road a little bit, and here we are. Over 3.5 years later, still rocking it.
Wow. Well, congratulations, first of all. We talked a little bit about the business, how many years you've been open, and also how the business started and how it now is evolving into a dining room and everything that you're doing now. My thing on how many vegan restaurants do we have in El Paso? More or less.
There's not a ton, but there's some people that do a really good job. A lot, like, for example, like Veggie Jackson, they're vegan. One Grub community. They do a fantastic job. They actually grow some of their own food. They have a nonprofit. So Lick It Up was one of the first people in the space. I don't know. I think they still have a location here, but they've expanded out into Dallas or Austin, I believe. So we have a couple of options here. Queen's Table was another one that shut down last year, but I draw off the energy of all those folks because we're all in it for the same reason, quit hurting animals and feed the community, show the community that there's a better way to do it.
What's the main reason someone goes vegan? And I think maybe based on what you said, maybe that's kind of like the primary reason. Mm-hmm. And when I watched this documentary, I'll be honest and very sincere with you, like my number one reason for trying it out, for at least giving it a try, which I haven't done, but I will eventually.
Oh, we got you.
Oh, for sure. It's not about thinking, again, it's a shame that I don't say this, but I'm not thinking of the animal. I'm thinking about my own benefits, the health aspects on it. Mm-hmm. So I'm wondering if, like, the people that start a vegan diet, right, or that they go vegan, or at least an attempt, do you think more or less, what is the primary reason? Is it like a combination of both? Is it 100% animals? Is it 100% their health? What do you think is the number one reason why they'll start a vegan diet?
I think there's three big reasons, mm-hmm. right? For a lot of folks, it's health. Mm-hmm. I started on the health path initially, but the three big ones is health, animal welfare, and the environmental concerns, right? Because I've always been looking into how we can support our environment in a better way as well. Like the factory farming system it's trash, it's non-sustainable. But I think the biggest draw to veganism is health initially. And then I'll speak from my own experience. It was health, and then as I educated myself more, it really became more about reducing the amount of cruelty in the world, the amount of pain that we experience. Like the term I like to use is global suffering, right? Because whether you're suffering through your own trials and tribulations, or it's a mother cow having its baby taken away, that's still suffering on a global scale, right? So it used to be about health, and now it's about reducing global suffering, so it changes, but I think health is the big draw initially.
Okay. Now, you've been conscious about the environment, about the animals and everything. Looking back, as far as the way you grew up, how did this started? Like, because again, it's something that it seems that basically that's the way you are, right? But I'm thinking just the normal folks, like the average person, just like myself, that we don't grow up thinking about nature, thinking about like benefiting others.
Yeah.
I'm like, I wonder if Josh has, I don't know if your parents are vegan, or at least have I don't know, maybe some way around, I don't know how to even explain it, around kind of like caring for the environment and others. How did it start? I know you talked a little bit about traveling already, and I'm like, I wonder if there's something there as well.
I mean, where it started, to be honest with you, like to be completely transparent, is, I'm coming up in February as 4 years vegan. 6 years ago, I didn't even hear the word vegan before, so that wasn't even in my lexicon. That wasn't even part of my my mental dictionary. That was, I had a friend who introduced me into the vegan lifestyle, and I gave him so much shit. Like, I gave him so much shit, and I was ignorant, and you just learn more. But I mean, I've always had a side of me that cares, like I care deeply for people. I care, deeply for the animals that I grew up on a ranch, I took care of horses and stuff like that, did typical rancher stuff, which includes some pretty shitty things to animals, like dealing with like castrations and stuff like that, so I've always had a relationship with animals. But as far as that upbringing influencing me into this path, it was not so much the case. I've always had a bit of a hippie side, I've had some that's deep seated in me, and maybe it just came out a little bit more as I grew up. But as far as my upbringing, no, man, like I grew up on a ranch, I grew up like that was it. I didn't even know about veganism until just a few years ago.
Nice. Now, do you find that the majority of vegan people do have that hippie side, or is it more on now it's a combination of everyone trying to, again, either the health side or maybe the environment side? Is that a combination now, or do you still find that a little bit more upskilled on the hippie side, thinking about the environment and taking care of others?
I mean, I wouldn't even call it the hippie side. I think today's society, we want to be more conscious as a whole, and veganism plays a big role into that conscious aspect. If you can think, be self-aware, and care for others in a meaningful way, you're already on the path and you don't even know it. So I think today there's just all walks of life, people being attracted to this, and it's such a growing community that you can't put them just into a box of like having hippie leanings or this or that. It's like, no, man, like I'm dealing with people who are hardcore carnivores for the longest part of their life that are making a change for their family, and then on the other end you do have, the hippie person who's never eaten meat, that kind of thing. And like I said, not to put in a box and like put the hippie lean on anybody. Like that's definitely not it. You don't have to be a hippie to be a vegan, by no means. So all walks of life are definitely flocking to this lifestyle.
Perfect. Do you see this as a trend, or do you see that like the people now, like myself, kind of like new to this lifestyle, or at least that I want to try this? Is it a trend, or is it something that for the most part people succeed in keeping this long term?
I definitely don't think this is a trend. I think this is part of the way to the future, if you ask me. And I'm not the most strict vegan either. I'm not gonna, crucify you for eating meat. That's not my MO. For me, it's about taking responsibility for what's on your plate. And as a society, we have to do that going into the future, to take care of Mother Earth, to take care of ourselves, because like I said, the factory farming situation is non-sustainable. The way we eat today and the way that healthcare is done, we have to take the power back. We have to, take responsibility for that ourselves. So, yeah, no, this isn't a trend. This is definitely here to stay. Not just here to stay, but to grow, and we're seeing that year over year. So.
Yeah, and I'm sure. Now, when I watched this documentary, I sent it to my mom, sent it to my sister, to some of my close friends. Because, again, I'm someone that works a lot through logic, if it makes sense, basically.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the way they were explaining how humans are not, not say born, but kind of like we didn't, the evolution of man, it wasn't through eating meat or other animals. It was more on plants and the benefits. And then going back to what you said, kind of like the pros and cons on eating meat. Not only the way that right now it's all industrial and with all this pest control and stuff like that, but even organic stuff, it made a lot of sense, right?
Yeah, for sure.
That makes a lot of sense. The question that I have for you is, for me, for an example, if I wanted to start a vegan diet, is it one of those diets that I will notice the benefits or the difference if I just try it, I don't know, 3 times a week and the rest of the week I'm okay? Or is this one of the things that you do have to go all in, at least to see the benefits, to see, to feel a little bit different?
No, I think one of the best things you can do is start where you're at, right? Even if that means meatless Mondays or, twice a week, or one of the things that we recommend with the company is, just get 5 meals. That's a lunch for your whole week. And if you start feeling a little bit different, because you will, you're getting more micronutrients, you're eating whole food, plant-based stuff, that stuff is going to actually support you. And you're going to notice a difference from how you feel after eating a Whataburger, double cheeseburger or whatever, versus having one of our meals that's got, legumes and zucchini and all this stuff that's beautifully prepared, and whole grains and stuff that is the macronutrients that your body thrives on. So you can feel the differences in as much as a meal. But to go all in, it's a little layered, because, you can go all in and not have the knowledge base. So you go all in and then you're stuck eating rice and noodles and you're not getting your macro profile filled out, right? So there has to be some, I don't recommend going all in right off the bat unless you've done some research on it, because what drives a lot of people away from the vegan diet is they say, oh, I went vegan for a week or 2 weeks and I felt like shit the whole time. It's like, well, what were you eating? And then they say, oh, I was eating a lot of rice, and there's no nutrition in that diet. So I think having that knowledge base first is essential, and doing your research a bit, because there's nothing worse than somebody who has good intentions going into it and then goes all in and just feels like trash and then gets strayed away from it, and then they never come back. It's like, well, you got to give yourself the opportunity too, because your taste buds are going to change. After giving myself a break from eating super processed foods for 2 weeks, one blueberry then tastes way different 2 weeks later, because your taste buds actually change. The gut bacteria, your microbiome, it's currently thriving off the diet that you're eating, whatever it is, so if it's used to growing off of, we'll keep using Whataburger as our example, right? There's going to be resistance in your gut, because the bacteria that are already in there, they're used to one type of nutrition profile coming in. So when you switch it up to berries, high fiber, you're going to feel different. And there's a loading phase. You're going to maybe go to the restroom a little bit more. You might have a stomach ache. Or you might be craving sugar, and it's part of the process. There's, we'll use a scientific term, it's activation energy. There's a little bit of a struggle. You're on the path, and you're going to meet resistance along the way. Before you really get to the good stuff. So going all in, yeah, you can do that as long as you know what you're doing, or seek out help, that we can provide to you. Part of the page, part of the Grown Together, motive is We want to provide you the information to be successful in that journey, whether it be buying our products or if it's just us educating you through the page. So it's a long-winded answer, but
no, and that was perfect, by the way. And it makes sense, and it just that's kind of like the things that I'm sure it's maybe not, well, yeah, holding other people back as well. The number one thing that came to my mind, like, okay, I'm gonna start next week, right? And you're like, do you know that for breakfast all you eat is eggs? And I'm like, oh, what is it? What am I gonna have for breakfast? You know, like, and then I start thinking about that, and I start overthinking everything. I'm like, okay, well, I'll start next month, right? And guess what? It's been about 2-3 months like that.
Yeah.
So that's what's holding me back, kind of like the lack of knowledge. And also,
later.
yeah. 23 years later, I'm like, oh, I was planning to go vegan, but it just makes sense as far as the benefits. And again, everyone that I know that is vegan, like, it's not that they regret going vegan, right? And then especially you, that you work out a lot, for example, I know the myth, well, you tell me if it's a myth or not, as far as the protein, that the only way to get is through meat or chicken, right? Yeah. And I'm like, no, I follow a lot of athletes that are vegan, right? And they do get it through plants, right? So what is the number one source for your protein, for example? What is it that you have a little bit more of, or how is it that you make sure that you have your protein intake?
So, yeah, I mean, it's like one of the things I like to refer back to is like, where does your protein get its protein, right? Yeah. So there's protein in everything, you know, broccoli, mushrooms, beans, you know, the big staples for a vegan diet, you know, legumes, they're huge. You know, I do enjoy tofu. Tempeh, which is fermented soybean. There's protein sources all over the place. Seitan, but if you're gluten sensitive, that could be an issue. But a piece of seitan, a 4-ounce piece of seitan, has a comparable protein macronutrition profile to that of a steak, you know, without any of the saturated fats in there. So protein access is not an issue. And, you know, because I do like to work out, I like to train a lot, I take a plant-based protein shake. You know, if you're that concerned about it, it's, you know, $30 at Sprouts, and that'll serve you up for over a month.
So there's no excuses there.
So it's, yeah, I mean, it's not an excuse. People could have that concern, you know, but the truth of the matter is people, we don't need a crazy amount of protein. You know, if you're eating like for gaining muscle or like the bodybuilding world, it's like a gram of protein to a pound of your body weight, right? Even at that, dude, like, that's a lot of protein. Like, a normal person doesn't need that much, you know? So just eating your legumes, your rice, your not starches, but your vegetables, like, you're getting a decent amount of protein in that meal as it is. So there's many different sources. And if you're really that concerned about it, you know, like spirulina is a algae powder, and it has more protein in a gram than anything else out there right now. You know, super protein rich. Nutritional yeast is a big flavoring component for like cheese sauces, stuff like that. Super dense in protein and B vitamins. So they go, all right, you know, where do you get your protein? Boom, there's your answers. All those vegetables, all those things, you know, where's your protein? Get the protein. And then the B vitamin thing, they go, oh, what about B12? It's like, do you even know where B12 comes from? It's like, it comes from dirt. It comes from like mushrooms, you know? So it's all super accessible. I mean, and B vitamins, you need to be supplementing that anyways, because even if you're eating meat on a consistent basis, there's so many people that eat meat on a consistent basis that are also B12 deficient. So all these things are myths, you know, and it just takes a little bit of digging under the surface just to uncover it.
Yeah, you definitely have to do your homework, find out more, not only go based on, again, what you hear, or that it's something. Again, going back to my experience, like, oh, it sounds so difficult to get my protein or stuff like that. And once you do your research, once you find that it's not, you're like, oh, okay. I'm sure like everything else, even like, for example, my breakfast, I'm sure there's a very simple alternative to eggs, for example, in the morning.
Dude, they have this product that we've been using lately called Just Egg, and it tastes just like egg. It has protein in it. It's crazy. Like, it's crazy how good these protein replacements and like meat alternatives are getting. It's we use Gardein chicken breast and some of the stuff we do for the restaurant, and like on our opening night there was some UTEP basketball players that came in, and it wasn't until halfway through the meal that they found out it was vegan. You know, it wasn't even like their first bite or second bite. It was somebody telling them like, hey, this is a vegan sandwich.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
I definitely have to go check out the place.
I mean, like, hats off to the vegans that were, doing it in the 90s and 80s. It's like they were just doing their thing, but we have it plush today, man. Like, it's easy to be a vegan nowadays.
And there's so many benefits. I mean, aside from, again, if because one of the things that when I talk to friends is like, oh, but you can never have, how can you not have steak again in your life? I'm like, that is a good question, And I know it's a dumb thing to say, but it is real. Like, I enjoy having steak,
Yeah, no, and it's understandable too. But I mean, it just depends on what you're trying to do with life, Like, if you want to enjoy a steak from time to time, like I just ask you to be conscious about what you're doing, Don't feed the factory farming system. Like, that shit is trash. It causes so much suffering. It's bad for the planet. It's bad for the animals. People who work in slaughterhouses, they walk away with PTSD, So if you're gonna be committed to eating meat still, you're gonna be committed to eating a steak or this or that, like, do a little bit more research, be a little more conscious about it, take it as a treat instead of a everyday thing. It's not sustainable to eat it every single day, the way we've become used to. So.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Mm-hmm. Let's go ahead and talk a little bit on the business side. You said that you basically opened up the restaurant or the meal prep business right after, right? Did you do a lot of research? Okay, what is your menu gonna look like? Did you already had a good idea of your basic menu items? Talk to me about kind of like creating that business aspect now.
The business was very much one of those things you jump off the cliff and learn how to fly on the way down. Big time. No, because our model is really unique as far as a meal prep company goes. We offer a new menu literally every week. And we've done that for the last that's been the way we've done it for over 3 years, So I'm also not a trained chef. I'm a chef by trade. So we, like I said, learning how to fly on the way down, because we've learned how to cook the whole way through. You get better and better, so now we've developed a product that I was proud of it then, but I'm really proud of it now. So yeah, as far as like the menu creation, there was a long time where we were just building a new menu literally every week with no kind of no staple, no signature dishes, nothing like that.
It was you and your partner, right, at first?
Correct, yeah. So Storm is my business partner, and he's been along with me in the entire ride pretty much. And we would take turns making a new menu, and our tastes wildly vary, so but at this point he's taking on the restaurant end of the operation, and I'm doing the meal prep end of it. So it's been a great move in that sense, because it gives you a little more clarity around what your responsibilities are. A lot of business owners, if they have partners, it's kind of like everybody's responsible for everything, but that's not the best way to run a business. It's not an efficient way to run the business. You want to play to the strengths. He's more of an experienced person. He's very creative. He's really good at that execution of that creative idea, and more inspired by experience. Whereas myself, I'm inspired by providing healthy dishes to my people, right? Because, that's just what my selfish intention is. Like, I want to be healthy, and I know other people want to be healthy. So, that's the product that I want to provide. So, we kind of just made this pivot recently where we're kind of splitting our forces, and that's been great.
Where were you guys making the first meals? Was it from your house kitchen? Was it was it a location that you guys had even at the beginning? Where did you guys start?
No, so the first couple of preps we did at my brother's kitchen. I was really lucky that he lent it to me. It was at his home, And then once we realized, okay, we have to go more legit, there's people.
How many were you preparing? How many meal preps? If you remember, was it for 5 people? Was it for 10 people at first? And then how many people had to reach out for you and your partners to say, hey, maybe there's something here?
Yeah, so the very first one we did, I think it was around 7 to 10 people. And then that repeated. And after it repeated, it was okay, well, we need space. There's obviously a demand here for this, and people who had it the week before had it the week after, So, and it was mostly friends, friends and family that started off we started off with, but very quickly we realized we're gonna have to figure something out. So, I was really fortunate. We were really fortunate to be given an opportunity from our friends, the J&K Presents group. We were cooking at Born and Raised for the better part of a year, and that was a blessing. That really helped us a lot. So I'm really grateful to them. And then following that, we went to another place called Boxcar Grill. A family friend who had a restaurant so far away. Oh my God, dude! It was way out in Sunland Park, like the city of Sunland Park, and oh, dude, we were driving so far. It was so far away, and then we were still running deliveries too. So my delivery team would have to meet up at the spot, like literally 20 minutes away from the west side, you know. And then we were in there for a couple of months, maybe a little longer, maybe like half a year or so, and it was expensive. It sucked. The kitchen was beautiful, but it was challenging for sure. And then once that finished, in the meantime, we were really fortunate to find this location, and it took us some months to build it out. August was 3 years that we've been in there already, and it took about 4 months to build the place because the restaurant previous to us, they left a mess for us. We had to redo the whole thing, so that took a while. And in February of 2020, we finally got into our home base. And we kind of lucked out because initially it was going to be half of it was going to be a liquor store and half of it was going to be our meal prep service. And for some other reasons, they were not able to carry out with the liquor store. And we were given the opportunity to take over the whole space, which was pretty intimidating at the time because we were used to paying so much in rent, and then rent just doubled, you know. So, but we saw the opportunity and we're like, okay, let's take it, let's do it. Took over, and here we are. You know, we've been in there for almost 3 years now, so it's been a ride.
So I'm sure. When did you decide to go all in and kind of like make this full time? Because I know maybe at first you, again, like you said, you were doing it through other jobs that you had. Mm-hmm. When was the moment that you said, okay, I'm all in and this is what I'm gonna do? You
know, and that's an interesting question because there wasn't one point where it was like, okay, let's go all in. I mean, maybe when we formed the LLC paperwork, you know, we're like, oh, this got legit, you know. But we always took it as serious as that, you know, and the level of professionalism, we do our best to step it up every single time. You know, we want to be the best in the business as far as what we do. But there was never one point where it was like we kind of doubted what we were doing. It was always kind of like, all right, well, we're going to do this step first and then that step. And eventually we're going to get a space, and then we're going to grow the space and add this product line. And so it was taken serious from the get-go. But being a first-time business owner or just starting a business, you're not going to be as professional as you're going to be until 2 years later, you know. Not to say that we weren't being professionals or anything, but you learn, you know. And if you're not learning, if you're not trying to grow as a business owner, you're not going to succeed, you know. And that includes personal development stuff. You know, we opened the business, and personal development was right there with it. It's my business journey and personal development journey are parallel to each other. They both took off at the same time.
Is there a reason behind that, or it just that it came both at the same time?
I mean, really, I wanted to make something of myself. I wanted to expand as a person. And through my early 20s, you know, I went to UTEP and all this stuff, and I enjoyed my 20s thoroughly. You know, I was a bit of a savage. You know, I worked at the bars, and, you know, you drink on the weekends, and that's a lot of El Paso culture right there. A lot of folks get really caught up in that lifestyle, and I'm not talking shit on that or nothing like that, because that's where I came from as well. But I've also seen people that I kind of made a deal with myself. I was like, when I'm 30, you know, I don't want to be doing the bartending thing anymore. And I saw people that I grew up with in that scene that are still doing it today. And it's, like I said, not talking shit on them, but it's just something I wanted different for myself, because I've always had big plans, big dreams, you know, I still do. And yeah, that if you want to start a personal development journey, start a business, because it is it's like pouring gasoline on the fire, dude. you might be doing personal development, but you start a business and you have to do personal development. Otherwise, you're going to, like, your business is only capped by your own development, you know? And that's what we discovered early on, and thank God we did, because we wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for that.
Was your business partner also in sync with this mentality, with this mindset, with this way of thinking? Because again, as I'm hearing you, I'm also hearing my story a little bit, of course. But then I'm like, okay, how difficult it is that someone else, a third party, of course, another person, like also understanding like, hey, this is kind of like good for the business. This is good for us.
Yeah.
This is good. Let's not think profit right now. Or maybe when there's a difficult moments, difficult time, for them not to be kind of like defeated, trying to just, let's just call it quits, because that's a lot of self-development, right? A little bit, before I let you answer that, and this is... This is important because when I ask business owners, what is like the number one advice that you will give other business owners or maybe someone trying to open a business? And usually something technical. Oh, well, they should have a business plan. They should keep their overhead low. I mean, there's always that kind of like business. And when I get asked that question, I'm like, you know what? Work on yourself first. Like, know yourself first. That self-awareness. Have you been able to keep a job or a project or even a diet long enough that you have proof that when this gets difficult, because it will, you're still gonna stick to it, right? And a lot of times I see friends or maybe just people that I know that open up business, very excited about a product or that they're gonna make money, but something happens, and when that something happens, that's usually when they crack, and that's when we tend to blame someone or something or COVID or something else, which they're valid. But the truth is that there was never that self-awareness moment that, you know what, before I even start a business, let me make sure that I'm okay starting a business.
Yeah. And like starting a business, dude, is no small feat. I mean, it's crazy challenging. And as far as us being aligned in the development journey, I'm really grateful and fortunate because he was as committed to changing his life as I am was committed to changing mine. So we were in sync in that way. And also, having a business partner that you have a relationship with previous to going into business together is important in my opinion, because there was a lot of times where I wasn't performing my best or he wasn't performing his best, and egos, and you're sensitive about this or that. And it can get really difficult to communicate through that. It can get really, really difficult to communicate through that. And if you don't have some kind of fundamental relationship and you're also not doing development on yourself or discussing ideas in that kind of way, oh man, that's going to make it exponentially harder to be successful or have any kind of longevity to what you're doing. So yeah, we kind of we were living together at the time, and we'd get up 6 o'clock, 5:30 sometimes in the morning. First thing that's on the radio is Les Brown, talking about changing your life, Tony Robbins, So we listen to these things together, go to the gym, start working on the week's plan, all that stuff. And it was a great start, but we still had so far to go. And it really didn't manifest itself. I needed to work on myself a lot. I have my own things that I deal with. And if it wasn't for the self-development journey, dude, we wouldn't be here today. Absolutely. So I totally resonate with your answer about working on yourself is the primary focus, because everything else is going to be way, way smoother after that.
And it sounds like, I don't want to use the word luck, but it's so amazing that you had someone else to share that journey with you.
Oh, yeah,
I was telling you that one of the reasons why I'm doing this podcast is to network with individuals that, think it's similar to my way of thinking, trying to grow, stuff like that. And I did an audit on myself, and I wasn't having those conversations with my immediate circle, right? And it's not about stop talking to them. It's just more, okay, well, let's find more people. How can I find them? Well, here's an outlet, right? So when you set up that you guys were on the same page, I'm like, oh my God, that's so cool. That's like having it sounds like a very close friend, a best friend, like, hey, let's do this together. And you guys have been able to stick through it instead of just, for a little bit.
Super fortunate, like I said, super fortunate in that way. I mean, it it doesn't mean that it was super easy by no means. Like, it was still very difficult, but yeah, I was definitely blessed in that way.
If you don't mind me asking, you talked a little bit that maybe you were not there, that you knew that there were some things that you need to change when it comes to personal development. What were some of the things that you knew that you had to change in order for you to grow as a person?
Let's see. So I wasn't the best communicator off the bat. I expected for you to read my mind almost. So yeah, like my communication needed a lot of work. I had some bad habits, just, excuse me, but you work in a bar for your early 20s, drinking alcohol and working becomes the norm, so I struggled with some alcohol tendencies for a long time, and I had to work through that, and that was pretty challenging. So, I mean, you're not able to show up as your authentic self if you're hungover, or, something along those lines, or if you are hungover and then you're dealing with something that's kind of stressful situation, and you're not able to articulate what you really mean, because you're not performing, your brain's not working the same way it could, So getting over that stuff was step one, and it's a process too. It's not something that's like, oh, hey, I'm going to be better today. Yeah, but how about tomorrow? So it's like, it's a journey, dude, and you have to continue to put drops in that bucket, for sure.
Okay, I appreciate it. Thank you for sharing that. What are some things that you're currently working on? Everything's a work in progress, of course, right? It's not like one or two things, but that that maybe if you get better at, like now you're going to level up. What are some things?
Consistency.
No.
Consistency, having endurance, right? Because I can get really good at something for a couple of months, and then 6 months later, not so much, or the same, like, consistency is one that I'm working on right now, and really living in my own integrity. If I make a promise to you or I make a promise to myself, making sure that I fill that promise out, because you break those promises, or you just kind of like fail in those little commitments that you make to yourself. You're feeding, right? So, okay, I'm going to use a little analogy real quick. There's two wolves that live inside of you. I don't know if you heard this story before, but there's the bad or negative wolf, and then there's the positive one, and they're always at a fight with each other. And it's a grandfather telling his grandson the story, and the grandson asks, which wolf wins? It's like, the one that you feed, right? So I'm just trying to feed my good wolf from here on out, and live consistently and in integrity to what I really want for my life. So working on my consistency is the big one right now. And just learning.
That's so important. I'm with you at that. That's why when we talked about how I numbered the podcast, I knew that that's an opportunity that I had as far as I get excited about something. Yeah, I will start it and for sure. But I found that once you also start with an end in mind, kind of like my 52, that holds me accountable as well to finish it, right? At first, when I created this podcast, I'm going to do them weekly. I'm going to have all these guests. I'm going to reach out. And then I saw myself that I was enjoying myself. And then later on, I'm like, okay, well, you also have to deal with the hair salon. You have to deal with other stuff. And it would have been very simple for me to say, well, maybe the podcast, I just need to cancel. Yeah. But I'm like, no, senor, because I know how I'm wired. And I said, publicly, I'm going to do 52 episodes. And the people know me know he's going to do 52, right? Hopefully, it'll take me years to do them. But at the same time, that's kind of like my approach to being consistent and making sure that I'm able to follow through. I don't know how confident you're with yourself. And that's something that it's extremely important to me as far as when I meet people or taking on a project. I think that once you have confidence in yourself, you're going to make it somehow, some way. Yeah. Now, the problem is that having that fake confidence, and what I mean by that is that, again, that not able to hold your promises with yourself, not with somebody else. And that kind of like, to me, when I boil it down, when I think about kind of like the success stories that I hear from my guests or people that I meet, I'm like, I think it all comes down to confidence, true confidence in yourself. And after that, you find a way to make it happen. Now, the problem is how to work on confidence, because it's not as simple as, hey, you just need to be confident. Like, there are things that are really hard for me, for people to just be like, right?
Yeah.
So first of all, how confident are you with your, in yourself? And if you were to list 2 or 3 things that have helped you in your success as a person, I'm not talking about business side, but what are some things that you're working on that it's really paying off, that it's giving you dividends there?
Yeah, good question. So I agree with you. Like, confidence isn't something you just kind of switch on, it's like drops in the bucket again. And I've always had a certain level of confidence, because like I played sports as a little kid. You do things that are hard, so you kind of start building that. But it's easy to lose your confidence too, super easy to lose your confidence, because I've been there before. You try hard on something and the result doesn't come that you expect, and momentum goes in both directions. You know what I mean? So what's been important for me is practicing the basics. For me, the basics are, I get up, I practice my gratitude, and I train. I like to work out, and moving your body, that produces endorphins. You're going to feel better already, and plus you did something hard for the day that not everybody's doing, so I think just doing difficult things is what leads to confidence. And it's been super important for my development and my mental health, dude, because like I noticed when I wasn't training, like in COVID times, when I wasn't training hard, and I wasn't consistent with it, my confidence started to slip. My image of myself started to change a little bit. And so I think maintaining a certain level of physical fitness is important. And even if you're even if you're overweight, or even if you have something else going on with you, figure out a way to invest in that body, because we're this organism special, and if you're not moving a certain way, or if you're not investing in it, it's gonna tell you one way or another. And maybe that lack of confidence, or like losing that, is your body's way, or your brain's way telling you like, hey, that thing that's really important to you, we need to do that. So yeah, for me it's fitness stuff, and reading, just growing in whatever positive direction. Feeding the mind is super important too. Podcasts or reading a book, like that new knowledge that also breeds confidence as well. So those are all important things in my opinion.
Are those the most, I'm not gonna say successful attributes, but maybe the attributes that you consider that have helped you the most to where you stand right now? Those things?
I definitely think learning is.
That wanting to grow, right? Of course.
Yeah, like it's been a common thread in my life. I mean, growing together, growing is a pillar that is like I stand on, like that's like it's one of our basic human needs, and if you're not growing, what are you doing? Stagnating. Stagnation's a death, essentially. So yeah, I think finding a way to grow in any environment is like, it's of critical importance.
Yeah. Tony Robbins had said this once, and I know that you also follow him. And when I thought about it, like, that is 100%, at least in my case, like it is something that is definitely truth, which is the definition of happiness is just progress. That's it. Happiness equals to progress. And when I think about what makes me happy, I'm like, just having a project and moving a little bit, just having that progress, that continuous progress, that alone, it is happiness. And I'm big on that for sure.
I've heard that from him before also, and I totally resonate with that. I'm like, that's true. That's absolutely true. Happiest times of my life is when I feel like I'm making forward steps. So I agree.
And I think the secret to that is finding a way to having that continued progress. And when I think about my friends or the people that I know that are maybe suffering from depression or not happy where they stand, like when we look at what actions they're taking, they're not taking actions, right? To at least to try to get out of there. And again, someone that is working on a project, that is doing something for themselves, you see the happiness that comes with that. Mm-hmm. Again, it doesn't mean achieving that progress. I mean, that goal, achieving that $2 million that you want at the end of the year, but working on that's amazing, right?
Yeah, it's all about the journey, right?
It is. I'm gonna ask you something that Chelsea, the owner of Choco Relic, asked me last time. It was right after we recorded because we started this conversation on happiness. For some reason, it always goes there. And she said, are you the happiest person that you know in your life? And I was like, I'm not going to share my answer here because it's not about me.
What an interesting, what a good question, though.
It is, because first of all, it makes you think. And then if the answer is no, then the follow-up question is, so then what's missing? So let me ask you, let me go back. Are you the happiest person that you know?
You know, I would like to think that I know that I'm a very happy person because I can find happiness in a lot of places. You know, I'm very blessed with my life. I've got family and friends and, you know, a roof over my head. So I definitely am one of the happiest people that I know. But, you know, I also see other people who are living incredible lives and they look very happy. So for me to say that I'm the happiest person, I don't know. I think that's all relative. But I'm up there.
There you go. And I think that's basically what the answer is, because of course you know a lot of people and they say, oh, I'm happier than this guy. It's not about that. But to know that, you know what, I'm a very happy person.
Yeah, no,
that's basically like kind of like what I think the answer we should all lean to have instead of right off bat saying, well, no, maybe I'm not the happiest person, you know?
And you can't get happiness crossed up with like satisfied, right?
Ooh, that's a good one. Explain yourself, sir.
Because like you can be happy, but you can still be dissatisfied, right? Like currently, like, I'm not satisfied with a lot of things, like my business performance, you know, my physical performance. Like I'm not content there, you know, I'm not satisfied, and that's part of the hunger that pushes me to step into that next phase of my own greatness, right? So I think by being happy, yeah, you can be happy, but don't be complacent because you're happy. You know, be happy, but still be chasing, you know, chase more happiness. Fucking get some, you know?
Yeah, no, and that makes sense. And once you have reached that level of happiness, again, it doesn't mean that you're perfect. Doesn't mean that you smile all the time and Mr. Happy. It doesn't mean that. It just means that very few things make you unhappy. You know, when I think about what makes me happy, like, I'm not smiling all day. I'm not telling everyone, hey, here's a heart for you. Here's another heart for you. That's not me at all. But what it is that very few things bother me in a way that bothers my life. And the reason why I think that comes in play, or that is true, is because the perspective that I have in life, that as long as I have health, you know, my kids, of course, they're good. You know what, anything that I have, it's a plus. So I really think that, you know, always when I have a difficult situation going on or a bad situation, either personal, business, whatever it is, my number one question that I ask myself is, okay, is this negative situation, are you gonna die from it? Like, is there a possibility you're gonna die from this situation? And if the answer is no, then don't worry about it, you know? Then that's kind of like what has helped me, like, okay, we'll just move on, you know, going back to perspective. Sometimes I'm sure when you have those difficult moments at work, but personal life, of course you're stressed, of course you're feeling at that moment. I think it just not allowing that moment to dictate the way you feel about other moments or other things in your life, right?
For sure.
And that's kind of like what I want to segue a little bit to the videos that you make about trying to not only share your story, but also trying to positively impact other people. And we talked a little bit about this, that you cannot be like willing to share or at least giving advice if you don't feel satisfied or happy with yourself, right? Doesn't mean we're perfect, right? But you have to be at a stage that you're satisfied, that you're comfortable, and you want to help someone else. And you cannot help someone else if you know that, you know, I need help myself, right? Sure. So let's talk a little bit about those videos, the intent behind that. What is it? What's your intention there?
Okay, so like the videos that I was making, I still make from time to time. Really, the intention is to positively impact any one individual. If I can provide value to somebody, whether it be in the respects of mental health, of leadership, business stuff. But a lot of what I've noticed I like to talk about is like psychology and mental health stuff. And that's because it's such a delicate thing. You know, it's really easy to slip into some depressive or anxious behaviors. And like I said, it's easy for me to speak on that kind of stuff because I've kind of been there in a sense. You know, I've experienced it, and I never really experienced like depression or anxiety the same way I did until like the end of COVID last year, like this time last year. And it was shit, man. It was tough, you know. And with the video stuff, sharing my experience, you know, like I want to let people know, like, hey, you know, you're not in this journey alone. You know, this is not just your cross to bear by yourself. There's a lot of other people out there that have not only felt the way that you feel, but have either made it through it or are still going through it, that are not only seeking help but trying to be help to somebody else. You know, so the intent behind those videos is, like I said, to just provide value to literally anybody that's going through a tough time, because we all go through tough times, and I want to be a resource to help people through that for sure.
That's amazing. I was telling you that I've been wanting to post some stuff like that, not all the content, but at the same time, I do feel that some of the stuff that I can bring to the table can bring value to someone, but then I don't. Why? Because then I feel that, like, who am I to, give advice, or like what other people are gonna think? And I'd like to say that I don't think what other people think about me, but it's there, so I can't just ignore it. Did you deal with that prior to that? Do you still deal with that, as far as maybe that you want it to be more frequent, or with the content that you're kind of like trying to post, the messages? Have you dealt with that? Talk to us about that.
Absolutely. It goes back to the consistency thread that I was talking about. But yeah, man, like imposter syndrome, you know, that's a real thing, and I didn't really give it as much thought until you're kind of in it and you're like, is this even being received? You know, like, does this matter? You know, and then you kind of just have to remind yourself why you're doing it in the first place. There's a lot of times like where I don't post a video because I don't feel like I'm acting in alignment to the message that I'm even trying to portray, you know, because sometimes like you had a shitty day and you just want to chill out and watch a cartoon and be non-productive, right? So it's hard to be like, all right, well, productivity is done this way because of this and this, you know? And so, yeah, I think like going back to that analogy of feeding the wolves, like feeding yourself that good information and like that motivating content that's going to help you feel, like motivated to get that message out there. And you have to connect yourself to why you started it in the first place. Like, am I starting this for the recognition of what is going to come from this video? Or am I making this video because it might get 5 views, and one of those 5 views is somebody who really appreciates the message? You know, and if you anchor yourself into that thought pattern versus, oh man, you know, I hope this gets out to a lot of people. It's like, who gives a shit if it gets out to a lot of people? If it gets out to 10 people and one person, it maybe changed the way they were feeling or helped them through whatever it is they're doing, that's worth it. You know, so, and like I said, I haven't been making my videos as consistently as I'd like to, because you get caught up and you're busy with your life and this and that. And like the longer you go, the less it's relevant to like your day to day. You know, so I think just like don't be afraid to start over, start where you're at, you know, anchor yourself in the true intention of what it's supposed to be there for, and get some, you know, go for it.
Yeah. And then again, going back to, I don't know if maybe you have received some hate, or maybe some people that were not, I don't know, as positive with your messages as maybe others. But at the same time, once you meet other individuals that do share kind of the same way of thinking, I find that those are the ones that will appreciate that, right? And what I mean by that is that their feedback will matter. And since it's going to be positive, don't go based on the ones that maybe don't give you any feedback, or maybe give you negative feedback to begin with.
Yeah, you know, I haven't really experienced a bunch of negative feedback, to be honest with you. And it's surprising, too, because, you know, sometimes I'll be at the store and I run into a friend that I used to work with or something. Like, hey, man, we really like your video. And I'm like, oh, crazy, you know, like, you're not a person I would expect to hear that from, you know. There's a Bob Proctor conversation I was listening to not too long ago where he's like, a friend of his is giving him advice to talk on stage. And he's like, well, what do you do when, you know, there's somebody in the crowd that's just, you know, not feeling it, not like, I mean, obviously I'm paraphrasing because I don't think Bob Proctor talks like that. But, you know, like when there's somebody in the crowd who's not enjoying the message, she says, you talk to the light, you know, don't talk to the darkness, talk to the light, you know? So even if there was people hating on the message or questioning the validity of it or whatever the case may be, it's like, well, I'm not talking to you, man. I'm talking to the person who cares. If you want to hear the message for what it is, you know, please, by all means. But if it's just there for hate, you know, like, I'm not really concerned about it.
Have you always been like this? Like, again, aside from the business, have you always had this kind of mindset, at least of wanting to grow and also just pushing yourself as much as possible?
Yeah, I've always been like super growth oriented. The mindset's developed over the years for sure, but you know, like I've always seeked out challenge. You know, whether it be through fitness stuff. I did Tough Mudder some time back. You know, rock climbing was huge in my life when I was doing that. And you're always looking to level up. You know, when I studied, this is going to sound ridiculous, but I picked my degree plan because it was one of the hardest sounding degree plans.
Which is what, if you don't miss?
I studied cell and molecular biochemistry at UTEP. But I also love science, though. I love science. And like, so yeah, I've always seeked out that challenge for sure.
Is it what you get after you're able to accomplish that you like? Is it the whole process as well? What is it that you, again, seek challenges?
I mean, you're always after, like, you want to finish what you're doing, you know, but it's the process that's the most meaningful part of it. You know, like, it's the becoming of the person who could finish that challenge is where the sauce is at. It's like you don't set a goal just to accomplish the goal. You set a goal to become the person who can achieve that goal, right? That's what I'm after. Nice.
That was deep, Senor. Thank you so much for that.
Yeah, man.
Let's talk about your COVID experience. You said that you had some. Can you talk about your personal experience with COVID and also the business side? Was it all related? Mm-hmm. What was your COVID experience and how did you get through that?
Sure. COVID was. So we opened our pickup menu for the first time the week before lockdowns happened.
Well, okay.
Yeah, really poor timing. So we're still, you know, puppies in the business game, still learning how to do it all. I mean, we still are learning a lot, but it was just an interesting time, you know, like because the business didn't really slow down. Like my life didn't slow down the same way somebody who was just quarantining all the time, because I still was an essential business. We had a weekday operation, we had the meal prep operation, we were still learning how to do business. So it was just it was a lot of work. It was a lot of work, a lot of stress, a lot of me not being like I wasn't there with my good habits quite yet. You know, I was still like, I'm trying to like articulate this beautifully, but I wasn't full as a person. My cup wasn't filled yet because I wasn't investing in myself enough and leaning on vices like alcohol and distraction or dissociation from the pressure that I was experiencing at the time. So COVID through the business, it was a lot of work, man. Learning how to deal with personalities, learning how to have hard conversations, because yeah, you know, the company was still growing the whole way through it. But just because you're growing doesn't mean you're profitable all the time, right? So, you know, it got really challenging at the end of the year. I say end of the year, like third quarter, you know, so like around September, November, like September going into fall, going into fourth quarter. Sheesh, man. It was a combination of stress between my partnership with Storm because I wasn't showing up the best way I could, financial stress because we were having to use money allocated to taxes to cover cost of goods sold and stuff like that. So it got to be really challenging in the financial department as well as the interpersonal relationships, and then my relationship with myself, because all of these things I was having so much of a hard time that my mental health was in the drain, dude. Like I I had this one day where like I was fighting a storm. I was in a relationship that I shouldn't have been in. And dude, I had never felt that way before. And it was like definitely one of the low points in my mental health experience. So I learned a lot from it though. You kind of, you gain a lot by subtracting some things, right? So you take away some of the bad habits, you take away some of the relationships you shouldn't have, and then you invest that extra energy into what matters, being, you know, whether it's yourself or the relationships that are paying dividends, right? And that's essentially how I got through it, by kind of hitting the rock bottom and recognizing like, hey, if there's not meaningful change now, everything that you're working for is going to slip through your fingers, you know, and kind of getting to that, that pain point last year was a big catalyst for me stepping into the next version of myself that is capable of dealing with those challenges in a more positive way. So my COVID experience was unique, to say the least. I know a lot of people had challenges and struggles, and a lot of people went through a lot, but the pressure from that has helped me grow in a big way, for sure.
Nice. Well, thank you for sharing.
Yeah, man, absolutely.
Now, the process of subtracting, because I'm with you, right? If it's not providing value, I mean, you do have to do an audit, and if it's not providing value, then you just have to subtract it from your life, right? Mm-hmm. But it sounds really simple to do that, right? Like, and all of us know, okay, well, don't eat that cake, you know, if maybe you're working on this, but the eating of the cake is there, right? Yeah. So is there anything, any tips, any advice, anything that you can share on when you're finally going to subtract? Like, kind of like rock bottom, this is kind of like, it can be family, can be relationship. Well, yeah, even family relationships, can be processes, can be friends. There can be so many things subtracting, right? Mm. But again, there's a reason why you got there to begin with, because you need to subtract them long time ago. Mm-hmm. But that did not happen, right? Mm-hmm. But when it did, what are some things that helped you like finally get through that and say, you're being subtracted, sir or woman or whoever?
Situation.
Yeah, it's a situation.
Leverage. You know, Tony Robbins also talks a lot about leveraging what you want versus what you're currently doing, right? So I knew that I wanted a healthier body. I knew that I wanted to commit my energy into something productive and positive. And when you recognize something's just taking away from that, just taking and taking and taking away from that, like, well, it becomes very obvious that that thing has to go, whether it be a habit, a person, whatever it is, right? So then what you do is you stack all of the things that you want from that benefit, right? From like taking the situation out, like, what do I really want? And you align yourself with it, what you really want, and you leverage your own personal desires to make it so painful to do, to continue to be in that relationship, to continue to use that habit as a soothing mechanism or whatever the case is. It makes it a lot easier to subtract that thing, because you have all these stones stacked up on one side. You know, it's like, I want to be healthy. I want my business to prosper. I want my relationships to thrive. And you stack up all these, you know, bricks on one side, and the one thing that's keeping you in place, it gets overturned, because you have so much weight behind, like so much things that you're using to just take away that habit, essentially. I'm trying to, like, I imagine like a teeter-totter, mm-hmm. you know, and on one end you have your bad habit, and on the other end you have, you know, the love for yourself, the love for the people that you want to be with, and it just kind of tips at one point, you know, when you stack enough things. So
also when you realize the weight that the other should have to begin with, right?
Yeah, exactly. Like I said, stacking, like the weight of what's important to you outweighs the temporary gratification that you get from whatever the negative thing is that you need to get rid of.
Yeah, it's just so hard being able to identify that. Like the way you explain it, 100% agree with you. But then as I'm thinking, okay, how can you, at least in step one, step mm-hmm. two, help someone that doesn't maybe share that way of thinking? Like mm-hmm. they know they shouldn't continue, I don't know, let's say that relationship, right? Mm-hmm. But there's something that prevents them from seeing the weight that their, let's call it personal life or love, should have.
Yeah.
And it comes to, okay, well, that's the hard part right there.
That is the hard part, but that goes back to doing that deep work on
Yeah.
yourself. You have to be okay with spending enough time by yourself and asking yourself those like having that challenging conversation with yourself. Like, what does matter to me? Where do I want to go in the next 5 years? Like, what's important to me? Where do I feel like I'm most alive? If you never answer those questions, you don't have any navigation on your own life. And that's what I think a lot of people fail to do, myself included in the past, where you're trying to, it's like I always say, you can't hit a target without, like, you can't hit you how do I say this? Like, you can't reach a goal without having like direction, right? And knowing yourself is part of that direction. So yeah, that's step one right there. Do some shadow work, do some thinking, sit in a room that's quiet, go on a walk, ask yourself some tough questions. It comes from that.
Yeah, that self-awareness is huge, right? Because that's what's
Incredible.
going to allow you to finally detect what you're doing good, what you're doing wrong, But then when there is that piece missing, that maybe you do not know what you're doing wrong, but you know that something's hurting or something's not right. That's why it's so important to hang around with the right people, not to guide you and tell you like how to do things, but just to give you that different perspective, right? Those videos that kind of like even the podcast sometimes, but my intent is just to offer a different perspective of maybe someone that doesn't have that, right? Kind of like if, again, the problem that I see a lot when people have issues, including myself, yourself, that we normally go with our friends and family to tell them about, hey, this is my issue. Can you help me out with this? The problem with going to friends and family most of the time is that they're my friends because they think similar to the way I think, right? But maybe that issue requires a different perspective. It requires me talking to someone nothing to do with me. Maybe like let's say like in your case, I have an issue with my business, or I have an issue with a friend, a relationship, a girlfriend, whatever, right? And I know that maybe something's not clicking. I just don't know what it is. And that's why kind of like surrounding yourselves and asking for that different perspective from other people, I think that brings a lot of benefit. When I look back at people that, let's call them haters, or people that struggle, the people that are negative in their lives, that they're always not able to stick to a job for a long time, they're always blaming someone, there's always something going on. If you really sit and analyze their situation, it's not their fault. Usually it's just their upbringing. They were not lucky to have the perspective that maybe we had with our parents, that friends that told you, hey, this is what kind of like the things that go. So when I see those situations, all those people, like, I really don't blame them, because when you look at their family or how they grew up and everything else, it's not their fault. The problem is, or not the problem, but it would be very nice if they would have been offered a different perspective at a younger age. That way they have a higher chance to correct whatever issue they have. Because now, yeah, of course, you're looking at 30, 40, 50-year-old person blaming everything on someone else. But then when you analyze their upbringing, their life, their parents, their family, everyone follow the same thing, and no one's able to step out of that cycle. And that's kind of like when I see videos like people trying to offer that perspective, I'm like, he's doing it. He's, again, trying to impact someone in a positive way. And to me, that's, I respect that a lot.
Well, thank you, man. I'm going to push back a little bit, though.
Go for it.
Because, like, we're all 100% accountable for our own actions, right? Our lives. And every single person grows up and has a degree of trauma. Some it's greater than others, and different types of trauma, But I don't have as much sympathy for somebody who's a grown person who's acting like a child still, or somebody who's like has the same opportunities as anybody else, because that just goes to just shows me that they haven't done their work, So yeah, man, everybody's got their issue, everybody's got their trauma. I got trauma, Storm's got trauma, you got trauma, like everybody's got that stuff. And yeah, it definitely helps to have like a good friend. It's important to have somebody who will let you kind of wallow in it for a second, but also tell you, hey, you done feeling sorry for yourself? Like, you ready to take some hard, like some criticism, you know? But if you're not able to take the criticism, I mean, like, you're not able to see your way through it, ultimately it comes down to you seeking answers. You have to go find the person that's going to tell you straight, shoot you straight. You know, you're going to have to read the book. You're going to have to ask those tough questions. So, like, I don't really have a ton of sympathy for somebody who's stuck in that way. Like, I mean, I feel for him. I empathize. Like, not to sound like I'm heartless or anything like that, but at the end of the day, it's still, you're still responsible for that.
Yeah, definitely. And it comes a point in your life that maybe you didn't grow up with your two parents, or maybe your mom, ex, or your dad. Yes. But it comes, I agree with you 100%. There comes a point in your life, maybe not at 12, maybe not even at 15, but at 20 that you're like, wait a minute, something's not working here. You know, like there is something there. It just kind of like, okay, that is true. But at the same time, like having if you don't have that strong foundation, at least, because they will, I think everyone reaches a stage or something in their life that they kind of like, okay, wait, something's not right here. Yeah. And that's where it's kind of like we're back to that saying, okay, which step are you going to take now? Okay, now that you have identified, like, are you going to, again, seek for help? Are you going to try things different? Or you willingly, you will continue the same pattern? Mm-hmm. And the thing on that is that, what if someone can offer them the same thing, but at a younger age, or that they don't have to do that? So if someone can impact that, like at a younger age, or you don't have to deal with the situation, again, with a really difficult situation at 30 or at 25, I mean, that's kind of like...
I see where you're coming from now, though.
Yeah, that makes sense. And again, and I'm with you as well with that, because you're right. It comes a point, either an action or an age or something that you notice that, hey, whatever I'm doing, it's not working, right? The thing is that, okay, like, how can we maybe...
what can we do about this?
You know, and that's what I see, because, again, when this is my daughter tells me stuff that she hears from school about, like, really difficult situations. And then I ask about the parents, and then they tell me, like, well, she tells me these stories that I can't even believe, right? And I'm like, oh, what? There's people like that? And I'm like, oh my God, I could help him or her so much by doing this, right? But then it comes to, and I don't know if you struggle with this, but and I know we're into a different subject, but it is very similar, which is kind of like, when you hear your friends having problems or other people having issues, that in your mind, oh, all you have to do is this to fix it. But then I have learned the wrong way or the bad way is to, bro, if they don't ask for advice, shut up. Just hear them out, right? And it goes back to, again, going back to the point of asking for that help and be willing to try it, right? Because it's one thing for you to ask for help or advice, but if you're just not going to do it, I'm like, okay, well then that was useless as well. I don't know. Let's talk about.
I think asking questions is like a good way to help create some discovery in that kind of situation. You know, like, don't offer the critique right off the bat, but maybe ask them a question so they can discover that advice on their own. You get what I'm saying a little bit?
No, that makes sense.
Like, I'm trying to think of a good example, but like, say you're having parental issues, you know, and be like, hey, well, how do you feel? Like, how does it feel, or what did you do the day after you had you saw your parents fighting or something like that? Like, what did you do that next day? And then they kind of like, oh, well, I went and I got blacked out drunk. You know, like, how did you feel after that? You know, instead of saying like, dude, you need to quit drinking so much, you know, you just kind of say, hey, well, how did you feel about this? You know, they kind of play, I don't know. Like, if I was going to give my friend advice, like, I would just try to ask questions before I gave advice, you know, because they don't maybe want to hear it, and they might also have a internal frame of reference, so they can discover it on their own. Yeah, that's something I try sometimes.
Oh, nice. Thank you. Senor, what's next for you when it comes to, we'll talk about what's next for the business, but for you personally, what is it that you want to reach, to do, to grow? What is it that you're working on?
Right now, I'm really just trying to make the meal prep process as efficient and smooth and organized as possible. I have so many different things that I want to work on, but trying to stay disciplined and getting the meal prep where I want it to be. I have like some money numbers that are like some numbers that I want to get to with that, but really it's about developing a really awesome culture inside the meal prep business, and then being able to step back from being like the hands-on operator team leader. So I'd like to develop that culture really well, build our team, and develop leaders within the company so that I could free up my time and my mind to work on a couple of different things that can help us step into that next chapter. So yeah, just refining the business. That's a big one for me. And then on the personal end, I just want to continue to put positivity out there, be more consistent with the message. I mean, that's the big ones for me. Other than that, I'm trying to go rock climbing this year, man. I swear that is like one of my big goals, is giving myself permission to take a little bit of time to live. Yeah.
It's difficult, especially when, of course, when you have a business, you have responsibility, you have employees that depend on you. Mm-hmm. Kind of like that. Also taking that time to be selfish and do the things that will make you happy and will continue to will allow you to keep on going with your journey.
That's a point that I struggle with a lot. It'll also be my what would supposed to be my day off, and I feel guilty for taking some of that time to decompress. I mean, I'm at least cognizant of it, but it's definitely something that's challenging for me.
Thank you. So business side, what advice would you give someone that wants to open up a business in the meal prep industry? I have a friend that's been thinking about it. I know he's going to benefit from hearing your advice on it.
I would say be organized as possible. I know this is going to be like one of those technical answers, but like organization's crucial and planning ahead. I mean, like if I was to look back and say like what things that have benefited me the most, it's been organizing my thoughts about it, knowing where I want to go with it. Like what we talked about earlier, like with thinking with the end in mind. Mm-hmm. If he wants to start a meal prep company, know why he's doing it, because like, man, this has not been an easy business to like break into with no like seed capital or anything like that. So definitely get your thoughts organized and your values aligned to what you really want, and know where you're going to try and get to, and go for it.
Going back to your social media, I mean, when I did my research, and every single time that you post something, like what comes across is like that you're passionate, that you like what you're doing, Mm-hmm. When it comes to either giving back or a new project or a new plate, anything that you can tell that you love what you do, and that's so important to do so.
I love life, man. Like we're blessed to be here. This is an incredible opportunity, this experience that we're having as human beings. Like, dude, this is the shit. So yeah, like I want to radiate, I want to put that goodness out into the world, because the world needs it. If I can be part of that, like I'm happy to be it.
And I think that's next, was once you find peace within yourself, doesn't mean you're not working on stuff, but that's kind of like the next step. How can you help someone else? Mm-hmm. Which that brings you joy, and then it's just a cycle. That
the contribution, man. Yeah. That's one of the ways to grow. You want to contribute back. You want to be able to help people. There's no greater joy than helping somebody that can't do anything for you. So like contribution's huge.
You're doing such a great job, sir. I really want to recognize all the work that you're doing, because again, you can tell that it's not only for your business, for you to be profitable, is that you also along the way want to help others with it, if it's within changing their diet to a healthy one, or even with the words of encouragement, positivity that you throw out there. Like, I can tell that this is someone that cares for others. So that's why I was very excited to have you on, sir.
Well, thank you for that. Yeah, I really appreciate that. And I also want to acknowledge you for inviting me and doing this. Like, you talk to some great people, and getting your message out there and inviting us to your space. It's incredible, man. So thank you.
No. Thank you again. What else are we missing, Josh? Talk to me.
What are we missing? I don't know, man. I'm just so psyched about life right now. I'm just so psyched about where we're going. I'm psyched on El Paso in general. I think we have so many talented, bright people in this city with like unlimited potential, you know, and it's really going to be exciting to see where we are in 5 years from now, 10 years from now. So I'm really enjoying the present, but I'm also very much looking forward to the future.
Yeah, when I started this podcast, one of the things I said is because there's nothing going on in Paso. There's no one doing anything in Paso, so I want to help out. Yeah. And then I did my research, and I'm like, bro, you're stupid. There's so many great people doing great stuff. Mm-hmm. And it's, okay, well, let's go ahead and share that, right? So that's why, again, when we talked a little bit about the guest, it's like, I want to be able to recognize, because you, like, that person deserves recognition for what they're doing, you know? Yeah, and that's kind of like the take that I'm trying to take now as well. So when it comes to a food space, do you see a lot of not only vegan restaurants, but in that space, do you see us growing a lot?
For sure. I mean, there's some incredible chefs out here, and that bring unique ideas. And I do think that the eatery space, like restaurant space, is like just food in general. There's a lot of room to grow, but I do think the talent that's here is in a great situation to make some special stuff happen. So I think the culinary space has got a pretty bright future in El Paso, and I'm pretty glad to be a part of it.
Nice, perfect. Yeah, man. So let me ask you the last question, which is the same question I asked every single guest, and it's a two-part question.
Ooh, I like this.
Two-part question. What is the one thing that you love about El Paso? And we cannot say answer food, by the way, because that's a given, okay, right?
Yeah, fair.
And then the second part is, what is one thing that you maybe would like to change or improve about our city?
Oh, yeah, that second one's easy.
Okay.
First one, one thing that I love, right? I love how authentic El Paso is, like people-wise, you know, like you come to El Paso and people treat you well. You know, you hear it from anybody who's from out of town. It's like, man, people are so friendly here. It's like, I love the energy that our city puts out into the world. You know, we're a melting pot of so many different cultures, you know, and I just think that we show up in an authentic way. So I'm proud of our city for that reason in particular. And then what I want to change,
yes, sir,
dude, I want to help our city get healthy. I want to help our city get healthy. I go to the grocery stores all week long, all the time, and I'm seeing so many people with, you know, like diabetes. I could tell you're diabetic because, like, I took care of my grandparents when I was, you know, a little younger, and I've seen the end results of those diseases over a long period of time, and it sucks, you know. And I don't want people, I don't want, you know, your grandparents to go that way. You know, I want our community to be a healthy, thriving, active community, you know, and that's why Growing Together exists. That's part of the reason why I post workout videos and do stuff like that, because, dude, it's not a super complicated thing, and it's just a little bit of education, information, and action. So I want to help improve the health of our community for sure.
Follow-up question on that one. What you think, you already said kind of education and also action, but what's holding us back from actually taking a little bit more action? Is it the knowledge? What is it?
I think it's a lot of culture, dude. Mm-hmm. I think El Paso has a really strong culture, and a lot of the food that we've traditionally eaten growing up and today isn't the healthiest for us. So that's where the education piece comes in, because, yeah, the culture is strong and it's important, but it doesn't necessarily mean that we need to be stuck in the same cycles of diet and disease, you know? Like, in the end, healthcare, it shouldn't be about sick care, because we have a sick care system, right? It needs to be a healthcare system where it's preventative, you know? We're going to take care of you before you get sick, versus you come in, you're sick already, and we're going to give you a lifetime of medication. It's like, that's bullshit. That's not the way we're meant to live. You know, so I think just showing people that you can still enjoy the same type of food, but with a better outcome for your body, is super important. That's part of the reason why we do the restaurant, because, you know, we had a Big Mac 2 weeks ago, you know, a healthy Big Mac. Believe that.
Is that pictures of a buffalo sandwich that you guys had there? I don't know if it was your personal or the Grown Together account. And I'm like, oh my God, that looks so amazing, by the way.
Yeah, I mean, and you can't eat fried foods all the time, but like we're gonna show you that there's a better way to do it. So that's what we do.
Oh, and you're absolutely right when it comes back to culture. Again, when I was thinking of going vegan or at least giving it a try, I remember telling a couple of friends, and they were bullying me about it, making fun, wow, what you mean? Like, I mean, I won't repeat the same comments or wording that they use, but it goes back to, again, not in a bad way, but it comes back to like the culture, right? That how come we're not at a stage that, hey, that'll be cool, give it a try, at least for that moment particularly.
Yeah, no, it's a culture thing for sure. But I mean, we're shifting the paradigm day by day. Everybody feeling better is more important than eating the same thing over and over again. And I think people are starting to realize that, and our generation is going to be really important in that shift of consciousness.
Yeah, that's why what you're doing is so important, and everything makes sense and everything aligns. From your beliefs to your actions to your thoughts, and that's kind of like one of the biggest takeaway that I get talking to people in this podcast, that like when they share their stories, when they talk about what they're passionate about, okay, well, everything makes sense as far as like the actions that they have taken and the things that they're doing or working on to do, right? And same with you. I mean, you're very passionate about helping others. In this particular way, translates to, again, trying for other people to be healthy as well. So, right. And not only, again, not only physically, but also mentally. So like, I'm eager to see what else is next for you, Senor.
It's all related, the mind, body, soul, spirit, all that. It works together, so we want them all to be in shape.
Nice. Perfect. All right, Senor. Well, once again, thank you. And thank you guys for watching or listening to this episode. I'll see you guys next time.
Yep. Thanks, guys.
Adios.
Bye.